He fell in love with what he believed my daughter would inherit, not with her. Brandon Ellis never realized that I was 3 steps ahead of him in burying every remnant of the $6.4 million inheritance my grandfather had built through land, sweat, and secrets when he was organizing his move. Thomas Granger is my name. I live in peace and quiet in Ashland, Oregon, and I'm a retired federal tax inspector. Anna and I were the only ones left after my wife passed away. Using my instincts and skills, I did the best I could to raise her, teaching her to be resilient but never cynical. She had too much faith. I was aware of that early. Brandon brought charm, ambition, and a past that was too tightly wound to be untangled when he entered our lives. I could tell right away from the initial handshake that this man wasn't in love. This man had a purpose. What was he unaware of? And I still had one in me. Every father has a boundary that no one can breach. Brandon rushed beyond mine instead of just crossing it. Ashland warmed as winter gave way to spring, but I remained frigid on the inside. Anna has always been reliable, considerate, elegant, and steadfast. She became my anchor after her mother died. According to her, she met Brandon at a charity function. When she mentioned him, her cheeks turned red. "Dad, he's different, nice, motivated." I wished to trust her. However, there was something about Brandon that felt practiced. He was too slick, appealing, and polished, as if he had told the same tales too often. I remained silent, though. I wasn't prepared to dim Anna's light because she seemed content. Next, I got to know Marjorie Ellis. Stylish, astute, and usually dressed as though she were attending a board meeting. Despite the smiles, her tone was icy, and she operated some nebulous legacy consulting firm. We ate dinner at their spotless house in the West Hills. Brandon followed Marjorie like a prop as she greeted me formally. Anna shrank while we were eating dinner. Her edges were smoothed, and her voice remained gentle. It felt more like a courteous rejection than a compliment when Marjorie praised grounded simplicity. Later, Marjorie and Brandon sneaked off to take a call regarding investors. According to Anna, it was typical. However, I didn't enjoy it. No evidence was found. Just a silent, cautionary tale in my gut. And I had come to trust that intuition. Marjorie Ellis came to my door on a gloomy Thursday morning. No phone call, not a warning. It was just her fancy car driving into the driveway as if it were supposed to. She had perfect hair, piercing eyes, and a smile that stopped short of her face when I opened the door. She said pleasantly, "Thomas, I decided to pay you a visit. It's been too much time. I made tea." Accepting, she settled inside the kitchen as though looking over everything. "You've retained items. Modest," she remarked, looking about. "Anna has always enjoyed peaceful settings. Hopefully she won't forget them. She has a sweet voice." Her remarks were sharp. She discussed Brandon's level of attentiveness and connection. He has always taken the initiative. An innate guardian. It felt like control, even if it sounded like praise. Then there was the nuanced nudging. "Do you believe Anna is prepared for the next changes? When you marry into a family, you have a lot of obligation, certain anticipations." I didn't respond. All I did was listen. I learned something from each sentence. She had no intention of bonding. She was there to assess the value of the marriage her son was entering into. The house felt smaller when she was finally gone, less noisy. I saw her car disappear into the woods while I stood in the doorway. I realized for the first time this was more than just a romantic tale. A transaction took place. Furthermore, Anna was at the heart of something far more sinister than I had anticipated. By the time I returned inside, the sun had already set, casting golden light across the living room floor and slanting through the windows. After Marjorie's visit, the home felt heavier, as though her well-chosen words had permeated the walls. Anna stopped by for dinner later that night. She had the same brilliant appearance as usual, but there was a rush of energy and a slightly too bright glow. She dropped her suitcase beside the entrance and added, "I went to that little bistro Brandon likes. Redecided on a date in 6 weeks. Isn't that fantastic?" My heart paused for a moment as I turned away from the kitchen counter. 6 weeks? She slipped into a chair after nodding. Why hold off? Everything is coming together. The location, the list of attendees, and even the florist. I've been getting everything organized with Brandon's mother's aid. She is acquainted with individuals. After cleaning my hands, I sat across from her and looked into her face. "Are you certain you're not hurrying this, Anna?" Her smile faded somewhat as she blinked. "Don't start, Dad." I added softly, "I'm not trying to question your choice. However, marriage is more than a schedule or a list. It's a life, a lifetime." She folded her arms and leaned back. "You believe I'm unaware of that?" "No," I said slowly. "I think you're caught in a whirlwind. And it's possible that you haven't had time to simply pause and reflect. A moment to yourself, free from Brandon's presence, his mother's influence on plans, and the clamor and demands of others. Simply enough room to hear your own voice." She clenched her jaw. "You believe I'm naive," she muttered. "You have always done so. You think of me as the student who lost her lines in the school play. That isn't accurate. Dad, I adore him. I'm getting married to him, with or without your consent." I felt a void in my chest from the finality in her voice. Reaching for her suitcase, she headed for the door. Slowly, I followed her, the floorboards creaking louder than I remembered. "I'm not your enemy, Anna." Her hand was on the doorknob as she paused. "Then quit behaving that way." She was gone in an instant. The rest of the light was sucked away by the dark shadows as I stood by myself in the corridor. For balance, my hand sought the wall. Her entire life, I had shielded her from heartbreak and skinned knees. However, I was not involved in the most significant decision she would ever make. They didn't even trust me. And like dust, that powerlessness and the silent pain of being understood and needed less settled over me. After Anna left, there was a calm tension for 2 days. Fixing equipment in my workshop, classifying old papers, and taking my daily morning walks down the riverbank were all ways I tried to forget myself, but they all felt muted, as if I were living someone else's life. The clouds eventually gave way to a beautiful sky on the 3rd morning. I made the decision to trek into town to get vitamin tablets and groceries. Willamette Street remained the same, with people conversing, automobiles idling, and businesses at their windows. I was still wearing my coat, but for some reason it felt warmer. I was walking toward the cereal section of the local market when I saw another hand reach for a package. I apologized without thinking. The man I almost ran into appeared startled, then cheered. "Thomas Granger?" He spoke in a tone that was familiar. Before I realized, I blinked twice. "Caleb Weller?" I inquired. I hadn't seen my former coworker in federal investigations at the IRS in nearly 2 decades, but it turned out to be an old acquaintance. We decided to meet up for coffee at a peaceful cafe where the barista knew our names. Even though his hair had gray edges, Caleb still had a keen appearance. His eyes had not become dulled by the years. As we talked about life, retirement, and the burden of keeping secrets, the years seemed to melt away in the comfortable booth we had dug out in the corner. I then informed him of 3 things: that something didn't feel right, that Brandon Ellis was Anna's fiancé, and that Anna was being married in 6 weeks. I drew Anna's rushed enthusiasm, Brandon's easy charm, and Marjorie's visit. I only told enough to warn an old ally, not everything. The look on Caleb's face changed. His lips were pressed firmly as he carefully put down his coffee. "Brandon Ellis," was all he said. I took a swallow. Yes. Caleb reclined. Are you familiar with the name Three Pines Capital? I gave a headshake. It's a shell company connected to several questionable transactions, he added. Customers complain about their money going missing. Accounts are frozen. People are losing their life savings. Twice he tapped the table. There is Brandon Ellis involved. They have also looked into him under a different alias. 2 previous commitments. 2 dissolutions. Cash flow. Substantial transfers. So far, nothing illegal. No victims have filed a complaint. However, there is enough smoke to drown in. I touched my cup's bottom. You're claiming that someone is watching him? He has been closely observed. Insufficient proof to bring charges. Not yet, but enough to cause concern. He is currently getting married to your daughter. That words weighed me down like a block of ice. I never would have thought that my kid would be entering something so dangerous. Caleb leaned in front. I can assist you in digging discreetly if you'd like. Look into aliases, pull bank records, and confirm property titles. Discreetly. I paused, then gave a nod. Anything at all. Thank you. On a napkin, he wrote his number. Call me if you hear something off. Don't judge, just the facts. He gave me a direct look as he got up to go, saying, You've always known when something smelled wrong. Right now, your biggest tool is your instinct. We said our goodbyes, and I quietly made my way back home. The pavement cracks, the rusting mailboxes at odd angles, and the willow trees hanging overhead all seemed more pronounced, and the street felt sharper. It was similar to entering a theatrical set. Everything is familiar, yet it has a lot of fresh significance. Anna had discovered more than just love. She was involved in a transaction that involved assets, old money, and deceit. Additionally, there were footprints on file for the man she was getting married to. I brought more than just groceries on that walk back. It provided validation, clarity, a pivotal moment. Brandon miscalculated 2 things if he believed he could enter our lives covertly: a father's skepticism and an ally who used to make a profession by uncovering corporate fraud. Every action I took from now on would be purposeful. Every action they took was captured on tape. Every assertion is examined. Since this was no longer personal, there was a fight. After a peaceful meal by myself that night, I sat in my study with the desk lamp creating long shadows on the walls. Anna's absence reverberated in every calm corner of the house, which still felt empty. A combination of an old sense and a glimmer of hope that I hadn't dared to feel in years was sparked by my encounter with Caleb. Before my phone buzzed on the table, there was a dense quiet. I replied, Brandon Ellis, to a message from Caleb that said, Need full name and any business connections associated with Denson Realty. Check out his mother, Marjorie Ellis, as well. He responded in a matter of minutes. Brandon's name was previously mentioned in a civil case. Going deeper. I put down the phone and got up. The weight increased with each step toward the closet. A tiny steel lockbox that I hadn't touched since the day my father's will was formalized last fall was located within, behind dusty accounting ledgers. I slowly unlocked it. Land titles, investment portfolios, timber, and water rights from Oregon and Northern California were among the paperwork neatly placed within. Not $9 million, as such claims frequently claim, but a healthy $6.4 million that have been meticulously accumulated over many generations. In the late 1950s, my grandfather had begun it all with a land grant. My father purposefully and silently grew it. A handwritten letter that had been meticulously folded was also present. Thomas, keep this safe. Not everyone who grins has good intentions. Only tell Anna when it's safe to do so. When blood is at risk, use this. For almost a year, I had fulfilled that commitment. I wasn't sure how long I could hold it anymore. Caleb came back the following morning with a sealed folder. He had a more serious look on his face. Putting it on the desk, he remarked, "You were right to be cautious. Brandon has ties to a Boise-registered shell corporation. False valuations, quick rotations, and silent property transactions have all resulted in money moving. Perhaps Denson Realty is only the beginning. I accessed the bank information, folder names, and connections between Brandon and those under FBI surveillance. A shiver ran down my spine. I shut it once again. Caleb declared, "I'll continue to follow it. However, if I were you, I would protect that inheritance. Until we know more, don't even breathe near a lawyer." With a nod, I silently locked the box once more. I didn't put it back in the closet this time. I brought it downstairs to the basement, where dust was collected from abandoned power equipment and paint cans. I carefully reinstalled the wooden slats after sliding the box in behind a loose panel in the wall, a location that only I knew, and covering it with layers of insulation. I then repositioned a dirty shelf, making everything appear as though it had never been disturbed. This was no longer merely a matter of caution, it was a matter of survival. Rituals dominated the days before the wedding. Menus were finalized, flowers were arranged, and smiles were practiced. I didn't want to dull the tiny light that was still in Anna's eyes, so I played along with her excitement as it slowly thawed. I gave her the impression that everything was all right. I was the helpful father on the surface, but something ancient and foreboding shifted in my gut every time I glanced at Brandon. And I could feel a new type of yearning underneath Marjorie's practiced politeness whenever she drew close to Anna. Sunlight streamed through St. Cecilia's Chapel's huge windows on the morning of the ceremony, illuminating the pews with golden tones. I nodded to relatives I hadn't seen in years and smiled at guests while wearing the navy suit Anna had chosen for me. But tension boiled under the politeness. I hadn't disclosed the inheritance or Caleb to Anna. I was unable to. Not quite yet. The ceremony was lovely in its own right. The officiant spoke warmly. Brandon looked dapper in his fitted tux, and Anna shone in lace and silk. With an unwavering smile and a firm grasp, I walked her down the aisle with a stone-hard heart. The reception followed. The setting, a rustic winery just outside of town, was lively with toasts and laughter, glass clinking, and upbeat conversation. Everything seemed staged and rehearsed. However, the atmosphere changed when the sun sank beneath the wine hills. A man wearing a beige blazer came in with a leather briefcase and looked around the room purposefully. Before whispering something to Marjorie, he went over to Brandon. She nodded, though her face stiffened. The man faced me, saying, "Mr. Granger?" His tone was practiced and bland. "I work as a notary. I have been asked to supervise the implementation of an asset consolidation document." I felt like I was slapped by the words. Brandon showed up beside me, beaming. "It's just paperwork," he remarked nonchalantly. "Normal stuff, you'll see." As the notary opened the folder, I glanced down at it. My name, Anna's. A little legalese on estate declarations and marital property. They had no time to waste. I inhaled deeply. Tonight, I will not be signing anything. Brandon paused his smile. Marjorie took over with ease. "Thomas, it's normal. Actually, red tape wouldn't be a good reason to postpone their new beginning, would it?" I looked her in the face. "You don't serve legal documents at your own son's wedding, whether it's standard procedure or not. This was planned." The notary paused. "Perhaps we should come back at a later date." "No," I answered in a voice. "You won't come back at all." Anna hurried over after noticing the disturbance. "What's going on, Dad?" Brandon spoke too rapidly for me to respond. "It's only papers, not a huge deal." Anna, however, didn't believe it. A glimmer of uncertainty or dread flickered across her face as her eyes shifted back and forth between us. I lowered my voice and took a step toward her. "We'll discuss it later. Don't sign anything, though. Not today." Quietly, the notary packed things and departed. With another toast, Brandon attempted to lighten the mood, but the atmosphere had changed. The facade was crumbling. And while I observed them scurrying, a new idea started to form in my mind. It was subtle but firm. They had taken action. It was my time now. I had been cautious, silent, and waited for the appropriate time for far too long. But enough was enough for me. Their strategies were risky in addition to being haughty. This was no longer only about keeping Anna safe. The goal was to make everything public. The scam, the deception, the manipulation. And something ancient and ferocious stirred deep within my chest. I wasn't done yet. I was getting ready to defend myself. Tight handshakes and strained smiles had marked the conclusion of the wedding. However, the consequences of the notary incident persisted long after the final visitor had departed. There was stillness for 2 nights. Anna hadn't gotten back to me. My calls had gone unanswered by her. Every hour that went by made my stomach turn. I had a sneaking suspicion that she had decided to stick with the delusion and trust Brandon. The older, quieter portion, however, clung to something else. The belief that once truth is seen, it cannot be hidden. Then I heard the knock on the 3rd night. Anna was on the porch when I opened the front door. Her eyes were red as though she had been crying for hours, and her makeup was fading. At first, she remained silent. Just entered, set down her handbag, and sat on the edge of the couch as if her legs were not strong enough to support her. At last, she murmured in a weak voice, "I read something I wasn't supposed to." I took a seat across from her and waited. Furthermore, in Brandon's briefcase, she said, there was a file, legal documents, financial records. One of them was a deed with my name on it, but the signature wasn't mine. The room became silent. She handed me a folded piece of paper that she had taken out of her coat pocket. I knew what the seal was. It appeared to be official, but the detail immediately attracted my experienced eye. It was a phony notary stamp. I glanced up at her. "Did you go up to him?" She gave a nod. I inquired about it. "I must have forgotten to sign it," he said. "That day I felt exhausted. I had a glass of wine. I don't drink, Dad." At the end, her voice cracked. I added softly, "He tried to gaslight you." Her hands shook. "I no longer know what is real. He claims to love me. Then he does this. His mother, too. She merely observes, as if I were a managed investment." Unspoken truths weighed heavily on the quiet that hung between us. "You were right," she said in a low voice. "I didn't want to see it, but now I do." I moved to stand next to her, simply being there without saying anything. Like when she was a kid and the world had gotten too noisy, her head slid into my shoulder. "You don't need to figure this out alone," I replied after a time. She gave me a nod and said, "What should I do?" I said, "You stay here first. Just for the time being. No phone calls, no justifications. You get some rest. Here, you're safe." Her face flashed with relief, but her eyes were still filled with anxiety. "I'm feeling so foolish," she said. "You are not foolish," I asserted. "You were tricked. There is a distinction. And you must have seen through it, because you're here. That is important." I double-checked all the locks and switched off the porch lights that evening. Once more, Anna was at home, and I wouldn't let her go into danger by herself this time. Silence and thick clouds greeted the morning. Upstairs, Anna was still asleep, her bag tucked next to the bed as if she hadn't made up her mind to flee or stay. I drove into town and left a letter on the kitchen table. I needed answers more than I needed room to contemplate. The air at Caleb's office smelled of burnt coffee, and the blinds were only partially drawn. He nodded, looking up from his desk. "Did she return home?" he inquired. I gave a nod. "And she brought evidence." Caleb's gaze grew strained. "After that, we move forward." A tiny packet he slid across the desk. I began searching through older law databases for Brandon's past. Discovered something hidden among Arizona divorce documents. The same look, same birthday, and different name. He gave me a picture. In front of a courthouse, Brandon, who is a little younger, puts his arm around another woman. Joyful, or acting as though they are. Caleb went on, they were married for 14 months. After finding false paperwork connected to her family's ranch, she sought for annulment. Lost it almost whole in a fake lending transaction. Does that sound familiar? I didn't answer. I had a dry throat. The kicker is right here, he remarked. She never filed a complaint. Her father made a private settlement. Brandon was paid to vanish. I turned the pages over. Financial documents, court transcripts, and screenshots from social media accounts that have been stored. Brandon had nearly cleaned everything, Caleb added. But that woman isn't just a story. She remains in Tucson. I located a number. If she knows someone else is falling into the same trap, she may speak up. Slowly, I nodded. There was no pattern to this. It was a strategy. This was not the first time Brandon had done it. He was able to move quickly, gain people's trust, and exert pressure. And he disappeared just far enough away to escape punishment when the foundation collapsed. With its weight resting on my shoulders, I stood up. I would like to talk to her. I was given a note by Caleb. Prepared already, this afternoon, on the phone. The air was colder outside. I spent some time sitting in my truck with my hands still on the wheel and the folder on the passenger seat. It was more than simply a gut instinct. I had evidence, a moniker, a narrative. Beneath smiles and fine clothes, Brandon had left a trail of carnage in his wake. Anna was still upstairs at home. She was not awakened by me. I didn't need her shaken. I needed her strong. The truth would not come as a shock to her. With her father at her side, she would hear it as a survivor rather than a victim. I turned to face the road outside the window. Brandon had previously deceived a family. He would never have another chance, not now. I'd talked to her by the time the sun set behind the woods that night. Rachel, her name was that. She was Brandon's former spouse, whom he had almost destroyed in Tucson, Arizona. Despite the calmness of her speech, I could hear years of painstakingly patched together. She explained to me how Brandon had seemed like the answer, but then used a trail of seductive falsehoods, falsified paperwork, and fictitious trust agreements to covertly destroy her family's property holdings. She didn't see the whole picture until she received the foreclosure notice. She claimed that Brandon always gave the impression that he was assisting, even when everything seemed to be falling apart. She didn't file any charges. Brandon was paid by her father to vanish. After thanking her, I hung up and spent a considerable amount of time gazing out my truck window. I met Caleb at his office the following morning. The updated report was already printed out, a transcript. Caleb remarked, "I thought Brandon would eventually talk." Therefore, I requested that a contact set up an audio recorder at the cafe where he had his meeting with his lawyer yesterday. The paper was slid across the desk by him. I followed the lines till I came to this. "Brandon, I'm leaving as soon as I have access. Get the property sold. Make a liquid. Let the cleanup take care of the rest." Then came another, harsher, colder line. "Brandon, Anna? She's only the key, but she's sweet. After you open the vault, you don't keep the key." I put the book down. I clenched my jaw. Like a surprise slap, that statement kept repeating in my mind. The corner of the paper crumpled as my hand tightened around the edge. "I knew that would hit hard," Caleb said, glancing at me. I stood slowly, trying to maintain a steady voice. "She isn't a key. She is my daughter." I approached the window and looked out, but I couldn't see anything. "No one talks about my child like that and walks away untouched," I remarked in a quiet voice. She seemed to him like a door that needed to be opened. She was disposable in his opinion. I faced Caleb once more. "He is incorrect." The flash disk was on the desk when I picked it up. This is more than just proof. Justice is just around the corner. I will not just stop him. I will ensure that Anna's name and value are never tarnished in such a manner again." Caleb gave a nod. "We're prepared. I'll submit all of the paperwork to the district attorney today." I put the transcript and flash drive in the lockbox once I got home. After that, I uploaded the final encrypted version. Anna looked up as I entered the living room. She didn't have to inquire. Something in my face caught her attention. I also saw anything in hers for the first time. Trust flickered, a sign that there was significance in our quiet. I did more than just get ready for court that evening. I was ready to restore my daughter's honor. It was raining when the hearing day finally arrived. Gray clouds loomed low over the town like a warning outside the courtroom. There was a hushed strain in the air inside. Anna sat next to me with her hands firmly gripped in her lap. A faint smirk crept at the corner of Brandon's mouth as he leaned in to whisper something to his lawyer across the aisle. He continued to believe he would prevail. The proceedings started as soon as the judge arrived and the room rose. Quick action was taken by Brandon's legal team. They produced the document, which the lawyer referred to as a signed and witnessed transfer of partial property rights, in a matter of minutes. Brandon sat back with the assurance of someone who has thoroughly practiced this performance. As Anna's name was called, I saw her wince. Next was Caleb. Be calm. Accurate. He asked that the document be added to the court system for verification. Then he spoke differently. "We have grounds to suspect that this document is counterfeit, Your Honor. Permission to present counter-evidence is requested." The judge nodded but arched an eyebrow. Caleb produced a small folder and gave copies of a thorough examination of mismatched signatures, non-existent notary documents, and a stamp style that had been phased out 5 years prior. The courtroom echoed with murmurs. The flash drive then appeared. As he talked, Caleb's eyes were fixed on Brandon. We also present a legally obtained audio recording of Mr. Ellis talking about his intentions with regard to this exact estate. As the recording began to play, the courtroom became quiet. Unmistakably, Brandon's voice filled the room. "I'm leaving as soon as I have access. Get the property sold. Make a liquid. Let the cleanup take care of the rest." The blow that caused Anna's breath to catch then came. Anna? She's only the key, but she's sweet. After you open the vault, you don't keep the key. Marjorie let out a gasp. The space moved. The judge's jaw also tensed. The big change, however, occurred afterward. Caleb turned slightly and said, "Your Honor, we also ask the court to recognize a key witness who has voluntarily flown in. Adler, Rachel, former spouse of the accused." Shocks. Brandon's gaze expanded. Slowly, he turned to see Rachel entering the witness stand, serene and peaceful. Caleb's twist was that. Not even I had heard from him. The color left Brandon's face. A brief break was permitted by the judge to consider further testimony. Marjorie yelled, "This is character assassination," and got to her feet. Her voice was harsh and piercing. "They're hunting my son." The judge faced her. "Ma'am, you'll be kicked out of the courtroom after one more outburst." Marjorie sat with a stinging line pressed against her lips. The mask was removed. Anna just stared straight ahead. Her voice faltered as we walked out into the chilly air. She thought everything was true. She also participated in it. I put a gentle hand on her shoulder. The truth now has a place. That is important. The courtroom doors were still locked behind us. On the inside, however, things had changed. Furthermore, Brandon Ellis had lost authority. When the judge went back to his bench, the courtroom fell silent. The mood had changed. Instead of buzzing with tension, the air seemed as though something final was about to drop. Anna sat motionless next to me, staring straight ahead. Brandon appeared less assured. His smirk, his outfit, and his cool calculating were all gone. A man who was unraveling minute by minute sat in their place. Brandon looked straight ahead, unblinking, while his lawyer leaned in and whispered. The judge cleared his throat. The court finds substantial grounds to declare the property transfer null and void in light of the new evidence, both testimonial and documentary. Anna let out a little gasp. I reached out and squeezed her hand. The judge went on in a firm yet steady voice. In addition, the court refers the case to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation, which includes attempted misappropriation of trust assets, suspected fraud, and falsification of legal documents. He gave Brandon a direct look. "Mr. Ellis, you might want to get a different criminal attorney." Additionally, this court is asking that Miss Marjorie Ellis be investigated for possible obstruction and complicity. For a moment, the room tilted. Marjorie's expression twisted in indignation rather than surprise. After standing as though to object, she attracted the judge's attention and sat down again, her stance tense. Her quiet carried weight for the first time. With one hand on the table's edge, Brandon sagged in his chair. He spoke in a low, nearly whispery voice. "They framed me." Nobody answered. As the hearing came to an end, the wind outside shifted. Slowly, people began to grumble as they left. On the steps of the courthouse, reporters waited. I chose to disregard them. I strolled along Anna, and we didn't say anything until we got to the parking lot's edge. Then she halted. She muttered, I thought I was broken." I looked over at her. "You were never damaged, simply stung. That is not the same." Her eyes filled, and I could see the weight of mistaken trust, the pain of betrayal, and the years of misunderstanding all rising to the surface. She admitted, "I let him into everything. I didn't see him use my name or my heart." I spread my arms wide. She entered them. It wasn't a father shielding a young girl with an embrace. It was the embrace of two individuals who had survived a storm and reached land. I whispered, "I should have stopped it sooner." "You did," she said, stepping back just enough to gaze at me. "The only person who did was you." We remained there for a while, the wind cooling our faces as the courtroom loomed behind us. Anna then whispered, "Is it okay if we go home?" I grinned. Indeed, let's head home. The storm was over. I took Anna to the basement that morning. I took the antique lockbox from behind a wooden panel and set it carefully on the table. As I opened it and saw bonds, deeds, and a faded letter on top, she silently observed. I gave it to her. She spread the letter out. Although unsteady, my great-grandfather's handwriting was legible. "More isn't what true riches is. It's being aware of whom to keep safe. Even those who smile first and attack later should be protected from this family. We were not endowed with gold by God. He gave us each other as a blessing." Anna raised her head. "Did he actually write this?" I gave a nod. He was aware of the significance of legacy. And who might take it? After that, we didn't say much, but a silent, unshakable bond formed between us. Not merely a conclusion, faith. Truth has regained a family story that had almost been altered by lies. In the quiet, I muttered a prayer for peace rather than justice, because God alone is aware of the number of stories He has spared before the last page. Please share this family story if it touched you. A good family narrative does more than just motivate, it offers protection.